So Israeli government's horrendous bombing campaign against the people of Gaza are still continuing today, and according to Al Jazeera, more than 11,000 people have been killed by this horrendous attack by the Israeli government, and this number includes many of the children that has been killed in Gaza, and many of the hospitals and important facilities that people need are being bombed in Gaza, and they need to stop right now. And as this horrendous bombing campaign against Gaza continues, the calls for the ceasefire is growing day by day. There are many protests that are being held across the United States and around the world, and many of the protests that are being held right now are being hosted by many of the Jewish Americans. So as you can see, criticism against the Israeli government is not at all anti-Semitic. Many of the Jewish people themselves are calling for the ceasefire and protesting the horrendous acts of the Israeli government. And one of the prominent voices in the United States calling for the ceasefire is the only Palestinian American member of the Congress, Rashida Tlaib. But as you all know, the American politics is bought by the bigoted pro-Israeli super PACs and the lobbyists. So almost all of the politicians in Washington, including Democrats and Republicans, are pro-Israel, and they're not calling for ceasefire at all. And Rashida Tlaib is one of the few members that are calling for it. And many of the people that are calling for the ceasefire right now are being accused of anti-Semitism, even though, as I just said earlier, many of the Jewish Americans themselves are calling for ceasefire. This notion that the criticism against genocide is anti-Semitic makes no sense whatsoever and needs to stop. But on Tuesday, there was a resolution that was introduced to the House of Representatives to censure Rashida Tlaib. The resolution accused Rashida Tlaib of defending the brutal rapes, murders, beheadings, and kidnapping, including of Americans, by Hamas as justified resistance to the apartheid state, even though she has called out the violence by Hamas multiple times. She's just not convinced that genocide against the innocent children, women, and civilians in Gaza are justifiable because of that. And many of the ordinary American peoples, including the vast majority of Republicans, think the same way. They agree with the calls for the ceasefire right now. So it is the people in Washington that are out of minds, and they're the ones being insane and supporting the Israeli government's horrendous bombing campaign against the people of Gaza who have nothing to do with the Hamas terrorists. So the misinformation like this is included in this terrible resolution. And also the resolution also accuses Rashida of publishing on social media a video containing the phrase "from the river to the sea," which is widely recognized as a genocidal call to violence to destroy the state of Israel and its people, to replace it with Palestinian state extending from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And it is true that she did include the phrasing "river to the sea" in the video she posted, criticizing the President Joe Biden for supporting Israel's genocide against people of Gaza. But she has clarified that "from the river to the sea" is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. My work and advocacy is always centered in justice and dignity for all people, no matter faith or ethnicity. And normal people would go like, okay, then that's not a problem if you use it that way. But many of the pro-Israel lunatics in Washington are not convinced by this, because they are just bad faith actors that want to demonize Rashida Tlaib. So it is true that some Hamas terrorists use this phrasing "river to the sea" as a justification for genocide of innocent Israeli civilians. But at the same time, many of the non-violent Palestinian people use this to call for the peace in the Middle East, and Rashida Tlaib is using it that way. So I don't see what's the problem here. But the pro-Israel genocidal lunatics are not convinced by it, because they're just bad faith actors, as I just said. So this resolution was voted on in Tuesday, but prior to this voting, Rashida Tlaib gave a emotional, inspirational speech calling for the ceasefire. So please take a look at it.
I'm the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, Mr. Chair, and my perspective is needed here now more than ever. I will not be silenced, and I will not let you distort my words. Folks forget I'm from the city of Detroit, the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, where I learned to speak truth to power even if my voice shakes. Trying to bully or censor me won't work, because this movement for a ceasefire is much bigger than one person. It's growing every single day. There are millions of people across our country who oppose Netanyahu's extremism and are done watching our government support collective punishment and the use of white phosphorus bombs that melt flesh to the bone. They are done watching our government, Mr. Chair, supporting cutting off food, water, electricity, and medical care to millions of people with nowhere to go. Like me, Mr. Chair, they don't believe the answer to war crimes is more war crimes. The refusal of Congress and the administration to acknowledge Palestinian lives is chipping away at my soul. Over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. Majority were children. But let me be clear. My criticism has always been of the Israeli government and Netanyahu's actions. It is important to separate people and governments, Mr. Chair. No government is beyond criticism. The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent, and it's being used to silence diverse voices speaking up for human rights across our nation. Do you realize what it's like, Mr. Chair, for the people outside the chamber right now, listening in agony to their own government dehumanizing them? To hear the President of the United States we helped elect dispute death tolls as we see video after video of dead children and parents under rubble? Mr. Chair, do you know what it's like to fear rising hate crimes, to know how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism makes us all less safe, and worry that your own child might suffer the horrors that 6-year-old Wadia did in Illinois? I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for a real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people and centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censure me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the President to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
So she gave this speech prior to the voting, but even after this speech, this horrendous resolution to censure Rashida Tlaib passed. The number was 234 yay and 188 no. So, and obviously, most of the Republicans voted yes, with the exception of four representatives. Some libertarian-leaning Republicans, including Thomas Hassie, voted against this horrendous resolution. So, I don't agree with most of what he says, but credit to those 4 Republicans that voted against it. But and most of the Democrats voted against this, but 22 Democrats voted for this, and all of them have received contributions from AIPAC, the racist pro-Israel organization that supports the genocide of Palestinian people. So as you can see, there are many Democrats that are bought by the Israeli lobbyists, and you need to understand the context in which this resolution was introduced. this resolution itself has some misinformation within it, as I just told you earlier. Rashida Tlaib does not support the genocide against Israeli civilians, but this resolution states that she does, and multiple far-right Republican individuals, including Martha Blackburn, has accused Rashida Tlaib of pushing for a genocide of the Jewish people, which she has not done. She has called for the end of the violence against all civilians in Middle East. And in fact, Rashida Tlaib is not calling for the genocide of Israeli civilians, but the people that are accusing her of calling for the genocide of Israeli civilians are the ones that support the genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. So you are the one being genocidal here, not Rashida Tlaib. So don't you dare say that she is supporting genocide ever, because you are the one supporting it. And you need to understand something, that they are accusing Rashida Tlaib of anti-Semitism for criticizing the Israeli government, but it is them that are being Islamophobic by being bigoted and criticizing Rashida Tlaib in very bigoted ways. As you saw in the video of the speech that Rashida Tlaib gave prior to the voting of this horrendous resolution, as she got emotional, there was a congresswoman that stood up to her and patted her in the back. That was Ilhan Omar. She has been receiving a lot of hate from the far-right individuals for a very long time since she was elected to the Congress. As an Asian person that grew up in Michigan, just like Rashida Tlaib, I cannot tolerate these bigoted attacks against Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. She has been calling for ceasefire as well, and she has been receiving a lot of hate for that as well. So I cannot tolerate these things, and if you are one of these people harassing Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar, you need to stop, because this is just bigoted and it's causing so much harm to the people of Palestine. There was a Palestinian child that was murdered in the United States because of this anti-Palestine Islamophobic sentiment that's been growing since the Hamas terror attack in October 7th. So this needs to stop. This is causing real harm, and it needs to stop. And as this bombing campaign against Gaza goes on, President Joe Biden is still supporting Israel and has not condemned Israel's genocide against people of Gaza. And he needs to talk with individuals like Rashida Tlaib and work very hard to stop this bombing campaign and call for a ceasefire. As a result of Biden's inaction, the numbers for him are dropping day by day. In recent poll, Trump was leading Biden in multiple swing states, including Pennsylvania and Michigan. If this continues, he is going to lose the 2024 election, and Trump is going to win again, and that's obviously going to cause a lot of harm. He's a fascist that doesn't care about anything except for himself. So the democracy is at stake because of Biden's inaction, and I honestly want him to drop out. But if he can't, I know it's going to be hard, but we need to support Marianne Williamson, who has clearly called for ceasefire. She is the most progressive candidate in the 2024 primary right now. We need to push her and make her win and defeat Donald Trump in the general election. So as I've been saying in this video, we need to grow this support for the ceasefire. And if you live in the United States, please call your representatives or your senators and demand them that they call for ceasefire as well. And there are many protests that's been going on for the ceasefire. If you can get to the streets and participate in these protests, we need to pressure our representatives more than ever right now. The children and the innocent civilians in Gaza are being killed because of the United States inactions. Even saying something on like social media like Twitter or YouTube, as I'm doing now, is better than not doing anything. So I want to say that silence is very violent in times like this. We need to let the American and the Israeli government know that there are many people that support ceasefire, and they need to happen right now.